Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into a timeless and universal topic: individual freedom and its complex relationship with society. It's a fascinating question because, deep down, we all cherish the idea of being free. The freedom to choose, to speak, to think, and to be whoever we want. But at the same time, we live in communities, and that naturally comes with certain rules, responsibilities, and a few limitations on our freedom. So how do we balance the desires of the individual with the needs of society? Let's start with the basics. When we talk about individual freedom, we're talking about the personal autonomy and self-determination that allow us to pursue our own goals and dreams. Freedom gives us the ability to express ourselves, to make choices without unnecessary restrictions, and to live life on our own terms. On the other hand, society, our collective, interconnected world, requires a certain level of cooperation and structure. Societies have rules, laws, customs, and expectations that help people live together peacefully and productively. Now, here's where things get interesting. On one side, freedom sounds incredibly appealing. Who doesn't want to live life with no limits? But on the other side, unlimited freedom could quickly turn into chaos. Imagine if everyone just did whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted, without any consideration for others. Roads would be a nightmare, classrooms would be unruly, and life, in general, would be chaotic. So while freedom is vital, too much of it can actually harm the harmony we need for society to function. Throughout history, philosophers, political thinkers, and activists have debated this delicate balance between the rights of individuals and the collective good. Take, for instance, Stuart Mill, a philosopher who argued that freedom is essential, but it shouldn't infringe on others' rights. His famous harm principle suggests that people should be free to do whatever they wish, unless their actions harm someone else. Mill saw individual liberty as the key to personal and societal progress, believing that when people are free to make choices, they grow and evolve, pushing society forward. But then, on the opposite side of the spectrum, we have thinkers like Thomas Hobbes, who had a more cautious view of human freedom. Hobbes believed that if people were left entirely to their own devices, life would be, as he famously put it, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. He argued that humans need a strong central authority, a social contract, where individuals willingly give up some freedoms to ensure social order. In Hobbes's view, individual freedom unchecked could lead to chaos. So for society to function, some restrictions are not only beneficial but essential. So, how does this play out in real life? Well, one way to look at it is through laws. Laws are essentially society's way of saying, okay, we want you to be free, but let's put a few guardrails in place so everyone's freedom is protected. For instance, you're free to drive, but you have to follow traffic laws. You have the freedom to express your opinion, but threats or incitements to violence are restricted because they can harm others. This balance isn't perfect, but it's society's way of respecting individual freedom while ensuring a functional, safe environment for all. One of the more debated aspects of individual freedom and society is freedom of speech. Speech is one of our most treasured freedoms because it allows us to express ideas, hold those in power accountable, and share creativity. But what happens when someone's speech is offensive, misleading, or harmful? Should there be limits on what people can say? Some argue that placing restrictions on speech is a slippery slope, while others believe that responsible limits are necessary to prevent harm. It's a hot debate, and an example of the constant tug-of-war between individual rights and collective responsibility. As we go about our daily lives, this balance will always be present in small ways and large. We make choices not just for ourselves, but for the world we share. And as we think about individual freedom and society, Perhaps the real question is, how can we be our truest selves while honoring the broader community? That's the challenge, the beauty, and the promise of being both individuals and citizens of the world. Another area where we see this tension is in privacy. Our digital world has made it easier than ever to share information, but it has also made it easier for our data to be tracked, stored, and sometimes exploited. People want to keep their personal information private, but on the flip side, society, law enforcement, and businesses often have interests in tracking data, sometimes for safety, other times for profit. Here again, we see the tension. As individuals, we value privacy, but society sometimes sees that privacy as an obstacle to security or economic growth. Education is also a place where individual freedom meets social expectations. Some parents and students may want the freedom to choose alternative methods of learning or opt for homeschooling over public education. Others believe that standardized education is essential for equipping the next generation with the skills needed to contribute to society. Again, it's about finding the balance between personal choice and the benefits of a structured, cohesive society. Health is another major area where we see the push and pull between individual freedom and societal expectations. In recent years, vaccinations, for instance, have become a topic of heated debate. On one hand, people want the right to make their own health decisions. On the other, public health officials argue that certain health practices benefit everyone and help protect the most vulnerable members of society. The challenge lies in balancing individual autonomy with the collective good. But here's the interesting thing. Individual freedom and social responsibility aren't always opposites. In many cases, they can actually work together harmoniously. For instance, consider acts of kindness, volunteerism, or community service. These are choices people make freely, out of a sense of responsibility or compassion, and they contribute to the health and well-being of society. In this way, individual freedom to choose becomes a positive force for society, showing that sometimes our personal choices can indeed align with social good. Let's also consider democracy. Democracies aim to strike that balance, giving citizens freedom while asking them to participate in a system that benefits everyone. When people vote, for example, they're exercising individual freedom, but they're also fulfilling a civic duty that helps society as a whole. In this sense, democracy is a brilliant, though imperfect, attempt at honoring both the individual and the collective. When it comes down to it, individual freedom and society's needs aren't just a tug-of-war. They're a dance. Too much individualism and society suffers. Too much control, and people lose the richness of personal autonomy. The key is maintaining a healthy balance, a space where people can express themselves while being mindful of how their actions impact others. It's a balancing act that changes over time as societies evolve and as new challenges emerge. Today's society faces challenges our ancestors couldn't have imagined. Technology, climate change, global interconnectivity. All of these issues add new layers to the question of individual freedom and social responsibility. With every technological advance, we have to consider privacy and freedom. With each environmental issue, we face questions about individual lifestyle choices versus the collective responsibility to protect our planet. In the end, the relationship between individual freedom and society is both dynamic and complex. It's about finding ways to be true to ourselves, while recognizing that we're all part of something bigger. We're individuals, yes, but we're also members of families, communities, nations, and, ultimately, a shared planet. The best approach to freedom and responsibility might just be one of flexibility, empathy, and a willingness to respect the dance between our desires and our duties.